Okay, and we are live for MCP's International Collegiate Programming Competition information session. And this will be the second information session. The first one was held just a few hours ago today. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Lucas, and with me here is Yili. We are both execs for the McMaster Competitive Programming Club. So let's get right into it. So what is competitive programming? So it's basically a competition where programmers like me and hopefully you guys watching, we solve small programming problems within a set time limit, which is usually 2 hours long, but we'll get into more details later on. And there are many sites that exist where users can either compete or train. And here's just a bunch of websites. I'm pretty sure some of you may be familiar with LeetCode. It's a pretty popular website that programmers use to kind of train for interviews. There's also a bunch of others like Topcoder, HackerRank, and there's also Codeforces. Okay, so what is a programming problem? So a programming problem is when you are given a written description of a problem, and your goal is to write a program that solves that problem. And what happens is your program is given some input, and from that input you will need to produce the correct output. So here we have an example of a programming problem, and Yili here is going to walk us through how to solve this problem. So Yili, take it away.
Sure. Yeah. So you would go on HackerRank, and it's pretty simple. You see the function description. It says given an array of integers, find the sum of its elements. So you would read the description of the question. It would also give you input format, constraints, and output format, and as well as a sample test case for you to try yourself. And the input, describes the format of the input, and output tells you how they want you to give the data back. And what it's also given to you is the constraints. And sometimes it's helpful to look at the constraints if you want to see what would be the upper bound on the timing complexity or the memory complexity, as well as type of variable you want to use. If it's it might overflow for an integer, so you might want to use long. And this is a pretty simple question. And for our ICPC tryouts, that's going to be happening in a few weeks, or next week, or in 2 weeks. Since it's on a HackerRank, the template of the code will be given to you, so you won't actually have to write any I/O. They'll just give you the template of the function. All you need to do is fill in the code for the function, and you can try your code. So for this particular question, all you need to do, given an array, is return the sum of all the elements in the array. So for what we can do is just write return sum of AR in Python. And down below, if you can run code to test your code against their sample input, or you can click the little box to test against your own input if you want to try your code against boundary cases, edge cases. And if you think your code is ready, you can hit submit code, and that's pretty much it.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Yili. So let's continue with our presentation here. And we'll be talking a bit more about the ICPC itself. So as you guys know, ICPC is a yearly contest with over 50,000 competing students from all over the world. And it's done in teams of 3. So students compete in teams of 3 to solve problems. And for McMaster in particular, what we're doing is first we'll be holding ICPC Tryouts to select a bunch of people to compete in the next phase, which is the ICPC regionals. So there we compete against universities in East Central North America. And from there, the format is a bit different this year. There's kind of this additional NADC competition, which is in between the NAC and regionals. And we'll talk a bit more about that. And after the NADC, then we move on to the NAC, which would be selecting universities to represent North America to finally compete in the ICPC Worlds. So note that tryouts are completed individually, so there's no worries for anyone to find a team. So this is going to be more information on the ICPC tryouts. We are going to be holding it on Thursday, February the 11th, sometime in the evening. I believe it's going to start at, it's going to run from 6:30 to 9. And as Yili just said, the tryouts will be online, and we'll be using HackerRank as our platform. And students, again, will be competing individually. And what we do is we'll select the top 15 students from the tryouts to represent McMaster, and we will then advance to the ECNA regional competition. So 15 students means there's going to be 5 teams representing McMaster, and each team again has 3 students in. There's going to be prizes. We are not sure what they're going to be yet, so stay tuned for that. And there's a sign up link here, which is also in our Facebook group. And if you click on it, you should get so you should get kind of an announcement about it. And there's a form that you can fill to sign up for the tryouts right below here. Okay. So here's last year's tryouts that we held on HackerRank. So I actually have it open here. So these were the tryouts that we had. Well, it's in 2019, but it's still considered last year. So we had 6 questions here, and you can see like the difficulty starts from the easiest, and the questions progressively get harder. And the easier questions have max score, like it has the lowest score you can get from it. That's why it's easy. The hardest question here has the highest score you can get from it. And the cool thing about this is that there's a leaderboard that allows you to kind of track the progress of people submitting in the tryouts. The leaderboard here was this is just the finalized scores from last year. Our president of MCP, Wyatt, he got the highest score, which is 144. No one here actually solved like all the questions here. So I myself here got 98, so I got third. I'm not sure if Yili was part of the competition last year, but we'll see how it goes. So you may be wondering, how is it that the execs of MCP are allowed to compete in our own tryouts? So what we do is we actually have an independent, in our case, we have previous members of MCP that actually write the questions. And since we execs, we don't, like, we are trying out in the tryouts, we don't actually get to see the questions until, like, the tryouts actually happen. So that's that. In regards to the next level of the competition, which is the regionals, what we usually did was we would send the McMaster teams down to Windsor, which is usually where the regionals itself was happening. But since this year it's a bit special since because of the pandemic, what happens is people will be just doing the competition remotely, right? And you can see here that in the regular setup, the 3 people in one team only get access to one computer. And what that means is usually you can't have all 3 people typing at the same time, right? You kind of have to allocate the time that each team member spends on the computer. So there's a lot of pen and paper involved too in the regular competition. As you can see now, since each team member gets their own computer, it's gonna be a bit more different this year. And I'm not actually sure how that's gonna affect like the competitive environment, but we'll see how it goes when it gets to the regionals. Okay, so this is just the progress to qualify up to the world finals in a bit more detail. So we already talked about the first two previously. So from the tryouts that we're going to be having 2 weeks from now, the top 15 students will be selected to advance to represent McMaster in the ECNA regional contest. And from there, there's going to be another selection process where 150 teams will be selected across North America. So the 150 top teams will be selected. Only up to 2 teams per university can advance. So say, for example, in the top 150 teams, there are 5 teams from the same university, only the top 2 will be selected, and they advance to the next stage, which is called the North America Division Championships. And here, another selection process happens after this competition. Only the top 30 to 40 teams will be able to advance, and the additional restriction is max of 1 team per university now. And so these top 30 to 40 teams will compete in the North America Championship. And from there, the top 15 teams will be selected to represent North America in the World Finals. Okay, cool. So if you're wondering how to stay in the loop on any announcements, so there's a document with the ICPC announcements right here. So again, the slides will be shared, but if I click on that, you see that this is actually the exact same document we had for signing up for the tryouts, but you see that there's a whole bunch of other announcements here as well. You can sign up for the MCP mailing list, but keep in mind that it only supports non-McMaster emails. So if you want to be part of our mailing list, make sure to use your McMaster email. You can sign up for the Facebook group, the MCP Facebook group, right here. And this is where usually the bulk of our announcements will show up to. And the slides will most likely be posted in our group as well. And finally, we have our Notion page right here, and this is also another source where you can get all announcements. So it has workshops, contests, and training material all right here. Okay. Cool. Okay, so some general advice on competitive programming in general. So, sorry, I skipped a slide ahead. Yeah, so competitive programming does have a steep learning curve. Don't be discouraged if you find it hard to solve or even find the correct approach to some of the problems. The key is to practice and make sure you know your algorithms. And we'll be, if you check the announcements, we'll be having an algorithm workshop to help you out on your way as well. If you're really ambitious, you can try out a few Code Forces contests. And the reason why we mention Code Forces is if I open this Code Forces page here, so this website is very active. There's always at least one contest per week, and it's a good way to kind of get into how a competitive programming contest would look like. The contests here are usually about 2 hours long, and you get about 5 or 6 questions to solve. It is very challenging, and the Code Forces contests, they are separated into kind of 3 divisions. So here we see there's Div 1. So Div 1 contests are like the hardest. Even I would struggle even solving the first 2 problems. Div 2 contests are a bit easier, but you would see that like once you get past the first 3 problems, the final 2 or 3 problems are usually pretty hard to solve unless if you're really good. Div 3 contests, they are what I would say they are the beginner friendly contests. You usually wouldn't run into any difficulties solving like the first 2 or 3 problems. So if you're just getting started with competitive programming, this is where you get started with. Yeah. So, and finally, solving problems is the essence of competitive programming, and that's where that's where you get the fun, right? Solving problems. So make sure to have fun when you're doing competitive programming. Yeah. So, any questions? So, I've been ignoring the chat in YouTube for quite a while now. What's the time for the ICPC trial again? Yeah, it's gonna be February 11th, 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's in the announcement here. Sorry. Okay, I got the time completely off. It's 6:45 to 10 p.m. here. And if you're not sure where to find out this information again, check out our Facebook page. It has a bunch of announcements here on our events. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so if that's all, then that's the end of our presentation, and we hope to see more friendly faces showing up to our future workshops and the tryouts. So, have a good evening, everyone, and see you around.